Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany. I live and travel in Greece, and lately I have been getting questions about, can I take a day trip to Santorini? And I always think no, because I think, why would you want to do that? But that's just because that's not my travel style. So for this video, I decided I would actually do some more research than I've done when people have asked, because usually they're like, oh, I'm in this island, I want to go to Santorini, can I do it? And then I just go look at that. I don't look at the bigger picture. So I decided I would go and take a look at both the flight schedule and the ferry schedule from Athens and then a couple of islands to see if this is really doable and if I still recommend it. And then at the end, I'm gonna talk about what I would do if I was gonna go to Santorini on a day trip. First, let's talk about taking a day trip from Athens to Santorini. This is gonna be a really long day, but maybe it's worth it to you. You wanna see Santorini, but you just can't afford the hotel prices there, which is totally understandable. The best way to do this, pretty much the only way that I would recommend doing this, is if you fly. So I went on to the airline websites, and the earliest flight from the two airlines that I would actually fly, which is Aegean or Sky Express. There is also Olympic, but they usually have the same schedule because it's usually the same airplane as Aegean, FYI. And I think the flight left around 7 o'clock in the morning. And then the last flight from Santorini on one of the airlines was at 11 p.m. at night. So the flight in the morning lands at I think it was 8 o'clock. And then of course you need to be at the airport, both in Athens and in Santorini, an hour before. So it gives you actually quite a bit of time in Santorini if you wanted to do it this way. There are just a couple of things that puts me off this plan. One, it's gonna be a really long day. Granted, you're not checking bags, so you probably don't need to be at the Athens airport more than at 6 o'clock in the morning, but the Athens airport is 45 minutes away on the metro and probably 40 minutes in a taxi, although at that hour, maybe less. So you're starting off very early in the day, and then of course you have to be at the Santorini airport an hour before. So it's just a very long day. And then when you're in Santorini, and it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it is the hottest time of the day, and some places do close in the afternoon for siesta, you're stuck in the heat with really nowhere to go other than to go sit in a restaurant. And while a lot of restaurants do have air conditioning, that's as if you can get inside and you're not sitting outside. The other thing about the Santorini airport is that it's very busy, it's very small. There are also a limited number of taxis on the island, and the bus in Santorini only goes from the airport to Fira, and then you have to go to Fira and make a change. So you're probably gonna have a kind of a long day, both just getting to and from the airport. How about from another island? This is probably more common than taking a day trip from Athens. I get a lot of people saying, oh, I'm in this island and I want to go, can I do it? So I decided I would look at a couple of options. The first one I looked at was Milos. So I went on to Ferry Hopper and I looked at the first ferry of the day from Milos to Santorini and then return. There was only one ferry on the day that I happened to look at. I did look at another day, but it was a slow ferry, and you would spend the entire day on the ferry because it was a several-hour ferry ride. So the earliest ferry that you could get from Milos to Santorini is at 11:45 in the morning. It arrives at 2. The latest ferry back to Milos from Santorini is at 3:30. So it only gives you an hour and a half in Santorini, which is not enough time. You can't even get out of the Santorini port sometimes in an hour because in the height of the season, it's super insane. And if you try to do this in the off season, there may not even be a ferry to go back. It may just be back and forth. Part of the problem is that the ferries in Greece are not set up to island hop. They are just transfer points. The ferry's schedule wasn't really built around tourists in my mind. I don't know for sure, but it really feels like it's just built to transport citizens of those islands, so people that live on those islands, which makes perfect sense. I'm not complaining about that at all. The tourists are just an afterthought. going from one island to another and then coming back in the same day is difficult, because this isn't just a Santorini issue. I see people ask me all the time, oh, can I go here for the day? And I'll go and look and say, no, you can't. So this is not just Santorini. Let's look at another island. I happen to know from experience that the island of Ios, it's more popular to day trip to Santorini from there. So I wanted to go and look at something that I knew it's possible from, but how much is it possible from? So the first ferry from Ios to Santorini during the high season is at 8 a.m. It gets there around 8:40 in the morning, so actually pretty good. And then the last ferry back to Ios is at 7:40 p.m. Not bad. Even with the hour or so it's gonna take you to get to the parts in Santorini that you're gonna wanna see. So you get there at like 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock, and then you don't have to be back at the ferry until 6:30. That's actually pretty good. It's still a long day in my opinion, and you're still gonna be stuck in the heat, but it's possible. If you wanted to do this in the shoulder season or the off season, it's probably not possible. There are a lot less ferries to anywhere to Ios, because Ios is not heavily populated in the winter season. Now, if someone asks me, can I take a day trip to Santorini? I'm gonna say, well, it depends. It depends on where you're coming from. It depends on what time of year you're here. And also, how are you gonna get around Santorini once you get there? Because if you have good options, then you can do it if you don't mind the really long day. If I was gonna do it, I would fly. It seems like the least stressful option to me. It also gives you the most amount of time there. It's that really long day that would keep me personally from doing it. This also means you don't have to worry about the weather affecting your return ferry back to wherever you're coming from. The flights don't get canceled as much as they would if it was a ferry. Sometimes the weather gets really bad and they will cancel flights, but it's a lot less common. The other thing that I would do is I would not take that last flight back to Athens, just in case anything goes wrong. I wouldn't want to be stuck in Santorini with none of my things if something goes haywire. And then if something did go wrong with your flight, then you know there's one more flight that you could potentially catch back to Athens. The other thing that I would do on the island once I'm in Santorini is I would either rent a car and make sure that they are bringing the car to the airport, and then they're going to return me to the airport when I return the car. Some of the rental car places are there at the airport, or they will meet you at the airport, do all the paperwork, give you the car, and then when you return it to their office, they will drive you back to the airport. Just so you can maximize your time and not have to rely on the buses or trying to catch one of those 40 taxis on the island. If you're not comfortable renting a car, the other thing that I would do then is hiring a private driver to take you around for the day. This is best too if you're going with a lot of people, because you could rent a van and then you don't have to worry about having a car that's big enough for all of your group of people. If I was going to do this from an island, again, I would make sure I either have a rental car or I have a tour pre-booked in advance, and that way I don't have to worry about any of that. And also then I don't have to worry about getting back to the port in this crazy public bus system. The port is already crazy enough, so if you just have to drive yourself down there, then that's one thing. Maybe you could return it at their office and they can drive you back to the port. And even though you may want to do a day trip from an island, it really depends on whether or not you can. So if this is something that you want to do and you're going to, let's say, Milos, and you want to do a day trip to Santorini, then you can't do it from Milos. So if you've decided this is what you're going to do, you need to pick an island that you can do it from. The other issue is that ferry schedules don't come out super early in advance. So like you can't look at the schedule for next year now. Of course, the issue with the ferry is that weather can sometimes affect the ferry. So if you're gonna do this, make sure you check the weather forecast a couple of days before you're gonna go, the day before you go, the morning you're going. because you don't want to get stuck in Santorini for a night because A, it's a last minute hotel, you're not going to have any of your things with you, and it's probably going to be super expensive. Also, don't do this day trip to an island from another island when your flight back to your home country is the next day. So you're in Ios on Friday, and you've decided that on Friday you're going to go to Santorini, and on Saturday you're catching a ferry and then catching your flight back to the US. There are too many factors for something to go wrong for that to be a good idea. So go on Thursday to Santorini, go back to Ios on Thursday night, go back to Athens on Friday, so that way you can catch your flight home on Saturday. So if you're up for a potentially long, hot day, then it's totally possible. If you want more tips for things to do and things you should know about Santorini, I have several blog posts on that. I will link them down into the description box, and there'll be a video coming up on the screen now that should also offer you some more information. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.